Are you playing to win or just running out the clock? In sports, the game clock drives every decision. It creates urgency, sharpens focus, and pushes players to perform their best. So, what if you treated your life with that same sense of urgency? I've created an exercise to help you do just that. It's called Your Game Clock. Download Your Game Clock today at bill-burke.net/clock. It's free, it's simple, yet transformative, and it could be the first step towards achieving peak performance in the areas of your life that matter the most. Remember, life isn't a practice run. Every second counts, and your time is now. Well, I am so fired up to welcome you to another episode of the Fortitude Forum. And today, my guest is Desmond Clark. He's a CEO of a logistics firm. He's a 12-year veteran of the National Football League, most famously known for his role and his time with the Chicago Bears. He's an author. He's an international keynote speaker. Desmond Clark, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good, Bill. Man, it's an honor to be on. Thank you for having me, and let's give the people what they want.
That's right. That's what we're here to do.
Yes,
Give them
sir.
some great content and some great insights from somebody that's had so much great experience like yourself. And I wanted to start, as I usually do, I want to go back to the beginning because it's really important for us to establish exactly where Desmond Clark has come from. And I know that so much of who we are and who we become can be traced back to our childhood. So tell the audience, if you would, just a little bit about your childhood and maybe how that continues to shape who you are today.
Yeah, that's a great point, Bill, because my childhood really did shape who I am today. Early on in life was really good for us. Our mom and dad in the house. Dad had his own towel company. And until about the age of 6, I always thought that we were like really good, maybe age of 7. And then all of a sudden, all hell broke loose. And later on in life, when I turned about, I would say about 10, I understood that my father, he fell victim to a drug addiction. And then that led to our family breaking up. That led to my mom being a single parent with 3 boys at the time. It's 4 of us now, and living in poverty and not having a whole lot. But ultimately, I watched my mom pull herself out of that low level of life and build herself up. And watching that gave me the inspiration to say at the age of 14, as I was walking home one day, I will be successful because I didn't want to be like most of my family at the time on Section 8, on welfare, on drugs, in and out of jail, this, that, and the other. And I think when I had that conversation with myself at the age of 14, that kind of set my mind frame, the same one that I still have today.
You mentioned your mom, and moms are so much tougher, I think, sometimes than they're given credit for. What specific qualities maybe did you observe in her and take away from that show of strength that you continue to carry with you now? Because that's such an impressionable time. I think you said 14 years old. We're learning so much as kids and absorbing. What did you take away from her, or maybe what resonated with you? Maybe you didn't even understand
Right.
that strength at the time. What were some of those specific things, maybe with an example of her strength, and how have you carried that on with you today?
Yeah, you called it. I didn't really understand it at the time because when you're young, you're just living life. Everything is just normal. But then when you
Mhm.
look back on it, when you're an adult, I don't know how my mom did that. I don't know how she did it with everything that she had to go through with my father, having 3 kids. But the thing that I always admired as I got older is that she always kept a positive attitude about something. Like she had every right to turn us against our dad. She had every right to be angry about a lot of stuff in life, but that wasn't her. She was always positive. She was always upbeat. Now, who knows what she did when she was by herself in the room? She could have broke down crying many a times. I know looking back on that situation, I would almost say that she had to. But the inspiration that I really take from my mom and even up to her last minutes of life is that she always kept a really good attitude about life.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, that's so important, and I think it's to a large extent it's controlling your attitude and what you choose to feel and what you choose to look at life as being, despite your
Mhm.
circumstances. I think so many people are just reacting to whatever circumstances they are, maybe to a degree, feeling sorry for themselves when they find themselves in a bad spot. That's really inspiring just to see somebody that's got the world going against them, and it really speaks to the human spirit, I think, and what type of strength sometimes we need to exemplify, especially when we are responsible for a few young kids. It's not just about ourselves and surviving. That's really impressive. And what an impressionable impact she had on you, and I'm sure your siblings as well. So
Absolutely.
coming from that environment, you ending up at Wake Forest in college and eventually in the National Football League, that's improbable at best, I would assume and estimate. So, was there a specific time where the light bulb came on for you and you realized not only do you have an opportunity to avoid the wrong path, but maybe get to a place where you're operating inside one of the highest performing environments in the world in the National Football League?
Yeah, it just goes back to my belief because of my experience that success is a choice. Now, some people be like, hold on. I'm not saying that it's always easy, right? Some people have to do tougher things to be successful. They have to go through a lot more to be successful. Some people don't. Some people have it laid out for them. But I think success ultimately is a choice that we make. It's a bunch of decisions that we make that we continue to make on a routine basis, really being disciplined about what we want out of life and not letting things drag us in the other direction. So that's just how I look at success. Now, when you're talking about getting to the NFL and all of that kind of stuff, man, I wasn't the greatest athlete in the world. I ran a 4.88 40. And when I'm out speaking, I always tell people to break out their phones and look up Desmond Clark combine stats. And when you get down to my grade, somebody shouted out, and somebody always shouted out real loud, F. Like combine grade was an F. I made a 35 out of 100 in my audition, in my interview for the NFL. Everybody understands, hey, a 35 out of 100 means that you sucked at that test. But I truly believe that everybody has greatness in them. Everybody has greatness in them. And it's not always, it's rarely about talent. Now, if you have talent and then you put what I call the process of greatness together, now you become a Hall of Famer, like Ray Lewis, who I played with in high school. But that process of greatness is just executing the details in excellence consistently over time. All of those things are choices that we make. Okay, execute, you may need a little help with that to get to the end. And then the details, you got to study a little bit. People got to educate you on different things, or you got to educate yourself. But want to do it in excellence, that's a choice. Want to do it consistently, that's a choice. And want to do it every time, all the time for a long duration of time, that's a choice. And that's why I say success is by and large a choice.
Talk a little bit about your experience at the National Football League and some of your teammates and maybe some of the guys you played against. Break down the percentage, maybe just a rough estimate of who actually relied solely on their talent and maybe didn't reach the full potential of what they were capable of versus somebody who had a lot of talent but understood that it was a process and it was a lot of work to consistently work on those basics and those details and maybe the separation between those two groups. Did you see a lot of that in the National Football League?
No, you really don't see much of that in the NFL because I think you start to see the separation in high school, right? There's a lot of guys with talent in high school that don't make it to college, right? Because they don't have the discipline to want to work at it or the grades or whatever it may be. So you start seeing that separation there. And then when you get into college, it's a grind. It is a grind in college to play football. So now you really start seeing the separation. The guys that get to the NFL, yes, some of them may rely more on talent, but I don't think there are many guys in the NFL that just got there on just talent. You had to have a work ethic. You had to understand what it takes to put in the work, not only physically, but mentally to even to make it to that level. So I think the question that you're asking, hey, when does it really separate the guys that was just talented from the guys who understood the process of putting in the work? I think that started to happen in high school and then definitely in college.
Who stands out as a teammate, maybe in college or the National Football League, who was on a whole nother level in terms of their work ethic,
Oh, Ray Lewis in high school. And not
even
just
in
in
high
high school.
school?
He was like that in little league. So he was like 1 year younger than my oldest brother, 2 years older than me. So we grew up in the same areas. So we always seen him and always seen his work ethic. And that dude was a beast in high school and college and also in the pros. Another guy, it's a lot of guys. You talk about Olin Krutz, you can't beat that work ethic. The dude was so smart. He was the first one in. He knew everything that was going on. Then you look at Brian Urlacher. There's no secret to why he was a Hall of Famer. He was uber talented and he worked his ass off, not just physically, but mentally. And I think football players specifically don't get a lot of credit for the mental aptitude that they have to actually play the sport. See, a lot of guys come in as athletically gifted, they'll work, but mentally, you have to process so much information on in seconds. And if you can't do that, then you can't play the game because you can't move at the speed that is going to require you to move at if you're constantly thinking all the time instead of just reacting and knowing where you have to be based off of just movements.
No question about it. I barely got to the NFL, but in college, there were guys that were so talented, five-star recruits coming out of college. And it was so frustrating because we couldn't put them on the field, and the coaches knew they couldn't put them on the field, not because they were lacking in any physical ability, but because they couldn't put all the mental pieces together, know who to block on which play and which route to run. That's a huge part of it. You're so right. It's so undervalued and underappreciated, the mental side of it. It's like playing a game of chess out there at 100 miles an hour.
Yes.
I love that you brought that up. So let's transition a little bit. Like for everybody, Bill Burke, Desmond Clark included, who are athletes, there comes a time when you can't play anymore. You're told you're not allowed to be on the team. And that transition, as can be very difficult. I know I struggled with it when my career came to an end, so much so that I wrote a book about it. But for you, were there critical mindset shifts when you had to enter the real world, the business world? What were those adjustments that you needed to make mentally, as we were just discussing, in order
Mhm.
to have that transition maybe be as smooth as it could be?
Yeah, I think the toughest part at the beginning was, hey, they don't want you anymore. And so that wasn't my identity, but it was definitely part of it, being a football player. And now that part is gone. So what do you fill it with? And for me, I don't know about you, Bill, but for me, I didn't know what I was gonna do next once they pulled that rug from up under me. I had to start figuring that stuff out. I would say that as a person, I didn't struggle like as who I am as a person, but trying to find out what was going to be next for me, I struggled with that. I got into real estate. I did device sales and I was a financial advisor. So I did a lot. I sold insurance, I became a speaker. Now I'm in logistics and I think I finally found, I don't think I know I finally found where I wanted to be and focus on. But it's a process of kind of recreating yourself, so to speak. Is I knew after a year and a half of being in real estate, this is not the life I want. This is not who I want to be. And being in medical device sales, I could have made great money, but that's not really what I want to be. And it was that turning of all right for going through different iterations to find out boom, this is me. And really what I found out is that I wanted to be my own person. I wanted to be my own boss. I like being creative. I like helping other people be successful. One of the reasons why I started being a full-time speaker for a few years. And when I created Bear Down Logistics, I brought all of those attributes that I learned about myself, including the sales side of everything that I did, the leadership side of everything that I gained from the coaches and other leaders in corporate America. And I brought all that to Bear Down Logistics. So it was just a discovery process of rediscovering who I wanted to be outside of the sport now.
Hmm. Yeah, that transition I think requires so much mental toughness, as success in any endeavor does, because you're stepping into this new arena where there's setbacks, there's failures, there's certainly a lot of discomfort and uneasiness because you're not familiar with your surroundings and you're learning something new. You got to go back to the beginning. As you stepped into business and even a step further into being a leader in business, Was there a specific setback or failure which, even though it was really difficult at the time, catapulted you forward because you learned so much from it?
Yeah, actually, my first job, I got into community management because I had gotten my brother into it, and I was in an office for a week, and I learned right then and there. I went and told the CEO, "Hey, I know that you gave me this position because of a recommendation from a friend, but I'll be wasting your time and mine if I stay here." So I learned right then what I did not want to do. I didn't want to be in a consistent office setting, and when I was a financial advisor with Mass Mutual, I was recruited there by probably one of the greatest leaders that I ever worked with. We built a practice together. Manny Amesqua, he's the CEO of Mass Mutual Great Lakes. And when he
Yep.
left Mass Mutual Chicago, I felt a leadership void. It was, I never felt anything like that before. The whole place changed. And when it changed, that made me want to not be in corporate America anymore. And that really catapulted me to go out and say, let me inspire people. Let me talk about leadership, my leadership skills, all the leadership skills that I've been around over the course of time playing ball and now in corporate America. And let me develop that. And because I seen it, maybe I can help other companies develop leaders and inspire people to pursue greatness and understand that they do have greatness. I think that was the biggest shift from anything that happened. And then, of course, the pandemic. As I got started with speaking, the pandemic hit, didn't have any more speaking engagements. And that's when I was introduced to logistics. Yeah, I think those three things was the transition for me going from one thing to another to where I'm at today.
Yeah, those are amazing examples. You bring up a good point, and shout out to Manny Amezcua. We both know Manny. Manny will be on the show in the coming weeks, so I can't wait for that. But I wanted to go back to that point where he left, and you talked about that void in leadership. Was that kind of a crucial moment where the light bulb went on for you and you said, you know what, I see a void here, I see a gap here, and I know maybe some things that I would do in a leadership role to fill that void? Did that kind of give you the motivation or the inspiration to start to seek ways or opportunities where you actually could step into a leadership role and teach other people what you've learned in your past, not just athletically, in your young business career as well?
That's exactly what it was. When Manny left, the feeling of coming to work every day changed. And having that feeling and seeing how everything was different. Now, I really looked at that and said, what the hell happened? And then I started looking at all the qualities that were there and that were not there anymore, and all the qualities that I had gained as a professional football player and into corporate America now at that time. We're talking about 2017, 2018. That was the beginning of writing a book, Principles of Winning. What are these principles that I know because I know what it looks like to win and the principles and the disciplines that it takes to win because of what had happened throughout my football career and what had happened throughout, I guess, the first 7 years of my corporate America career.
You bring that up, the principles of winning, and so much of that I think is necessary in the marketplace today. We take for granted as former athletes that we were educated trial by fire in some of the most high pressure environments that exist, but not everybody has been exposed to that. So, if you would, you don't have to go into much detail with each one of them, but could you run through the principles of winning for us just to give us a little taste of what that looks like?
Just to touch on the point that you just made, one of the biggest changes, and I know that you went through this too, we didn't have someone telling us when to get up, what time to be in the meetings,
Right.
all of that stuff. So we had everything laid out for us. Hey, you got to run this much, you got to lift this much, you got to do this, you got to spend this much time here. And then when you get out of that, you don't have that structure anymore, and you have to put that in place for yourself. So that's a principle in itself, is just how do you structure your day. But talking about principles of winning, the first principle for principles of winning is knowing who you are, honoring your name and your word, and defining that. What does it mean to you? And then what is it going to mean to everybody else? Number two is the power of relationships. We talk about teams. man, the best teams I've been on were the closest teams that I was on. And
Hmm.
we talk about all these the power relationships, but not too many people go into detail on, hey, what are the ingredients to creating a powerful relationship? Number three is a commitment to excellence slash that process of greatness, executing the details in excellence consistently over time. And then the fourth one is being self motivated. And that sounds flimsy on the surface, but when you think about it, most people are other people motivated. Like I'll look at Bill and say, man, if Bill getting 25 speaking engagements a year, I want to get 25 speaking engagements. But I didn't say I wanted 25 speaking engagements, so I seen that Bill was getting it.
Hmm.
So why did I choose that? And then just understanding, what do you want? What, forget everybody else. What do you want? What are you trying to create for yourself? And then the last one is being very result orientated. And what I mean by that, we could drill down into it for an hour. But first of all, don't lie to yourself. Don't tell yourself you're doing good when you're not doing good. Don't make excuses for yourself. The only thing that matters at the end of the day are the results that we're getting. And are we getting these results? And if you're not getting those results, now we got to go back and figure out why we're not getting the results.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. You bring up a couple of points that are more philosophical that I brought up in my book. One of them being, who are you really? And what really do you want? And so many people fall into the trap of looking externally, like you mentioned, and wanting to do what the other person's doing and thinking that if it works for them, then it'll make me happy as well. And I think you're so right to educate people on why that's not good, why it can be so difficult with all these external influences to find out who we really are. And I don't think enough people actually pause and think about those questions and reflect on exactly what they want because it can be difficult. We're all programmed, I guess, to try and be in groups and be not stand out, which is the opposite, I think, of really what we should be looking to do because we're all so unique. So you bring up some really great points, but I wanted to transition just a little bit to the mind and
Mhm.
your version or your definition, your vision of mental toughness. So, how does Desmond Clark define mental toughness, and how has that continued to show up for you and help you as you go forward and build a great business?
Mental toughness. Can you stay locked in emotionally, physically, spiritually to the things that you're setting out to do? We know that there are going to be obstacles. We know that there's going to be difficulties, but can we keep the same mindset when things are going good as opposed to when things are going bad, where it doesn't matter? I'm locked in. I know what I'm going for. Now, we're all humans, right? We're going to have emotions, but can we recognize those emotions and then get back to where we need to be? It's like being in a game, building this. Hey, somebody just went up 14 points on you. Well, are you going to sit and pout? Are you going to start blaming the offense or the defense or the guy who got beat or whatever that may be? Or are you going to say, you know what? I got to lock in and I got to do my job at 100% because the team needs me right now. And that's a tough thing to do day in and day out from hour to hour. But I don't think most people even approach it like that. Most people get up and I don't really have a plan for the day. The the most mentally tough people that I know, they can stay locked in for longer than other people. And when I say locked in, again, I'm talking about how they're thinking, all of their emotions that goes along with those things, thoughts, and the actions that follow those thoughts and emotions are all directed toward that end result.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm thinking about your position now and what you're trying to build and your role with Bear Down Logistics. How does mental toughness tie into leadership? Because I think from where I stand, there's a whole nother level of mental toughness that's required when you're not just leading yourself, you're actually leading a group of people and at the same time trying to drive those results that you were talking about. So how has mental toughness been integrated into your leadership style and how has that been beneficial for you as you lead your team and your business?
Yeah, so if you take mental toughness up just one more level into having belief in what you're doing, When you have a belief in what you're doing, it makes it easier to get up at 4 in the morning, right? Because you know that you want to get certain things done. Like I get my day started, I get my reading in, I get my meditating in, I get all the stuff that I know I'm not going to get in from 8 to 6. I get that in before that so I can be prepared to go for the day because of my belief of, hey, I will build $100 million company. But when I get into this office, I have to be focused. And for me to be focused, I have to take care of myself physically and mentally so I can be focused through the day. Now, it first starts with my belief in what I'm doing and what was created here. Now, every morning when I'm having my team meetings, I have to now really get them to believe in what it is that they say that they believe in. I don't need them to believe in what I believe in. I need them to believe in what they say that they believe in. And if they believe in the things that they say that they believe in when it comes to the relationship that they have with me and Bear Down Logistics, now we have a great partnership. And I talk a lot about belief because if you believe in something, your actions will show it. And just because you believe in something, that don't necessarily mean that you're going to be always successful in it, but your actions are going to demonstrate your beliefs, your thought processes, the way your emotional state from day in and day out will show if you really believe in this and or not. And if you can drive home the belief in your colleagues and know exactly what they're trying to get done, now that mental toughness, like I said, is all right, I believe in what I'm doing. So I know I'm going to get up every day. I know I'm going to do what I got to do because I believe in what I'm doing, and I believe that belief more so than anything else drives the mental toughness.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And you bring up another great point. I wasn't even going to ask you about this, but it's so crucial, I think, to leadership. How do you, and this is not an easy thing to do for any leader, in my opinion, but how do you instill or express to somebody that you're leading that you believe in them? And how do you get them to believe in themselves, maybe when they don't have that belief inherently? How do you bring them up to that level where they're confident, they're creative, they're assertive, and they start believing in themselves, which leads to more momentum and ultimately lifts the entire performance of the organization?
I'm gonna first start off by saying you can't do that for 100% of the people. It's gonna be those ones that have that initial spark where you can help create the fire. But it goes back to, for me, it's understanding, hey, what are you trying to get out of this? What is your motivation? Why do you want to come in? It's a question that I ask everybody. Why do you want to come to Bear Down Logistics? What is Bear Down Logistics? Is what will we help you create that you ultimately trying to get to? And I need to understand that because if I can't understand that, I don't know how I can help you. And so once I understand that, now I know exactly how I can help you. Now, do you really believe what you told me? So I have everybody goals written down. And matter of fact, we do what we call a game review every Monday. Play during the week, review on Monday. What did you say that you was going to get accomplished last week to get to your goals, whether for the quarter or for the year? Are you doing those things? And if you're coming up short too often, I'm always questioning, do you really believe in what you say that you're going to do? Because if you believe it, you'll be doing these 3 to 5 things consistently every day, every week, because you know that these 3 to 5 disciplines are going to get you to where you're going. Now, if you're not doing it, there's a reason why you're not doing it. And let's understand that. Let's understand if you believe that these things are going to get you there. If you don't believe those things, it's okay. Let's get to a point to to get something down that you can truly believe in. Maybe you need to lower your goal a little bit and take smaller steps and not try to come in and see that my highest salesperson is doing $2.5 million. Oh, you're gonna do 1 million when you probably should just start at 500 grand, 250, whatever that may be, because that's what you believe that you can do right now. And then let's push for that. And confidence build as you keep hitting different milestones and it just keeps building. So I believe that's the process is just understanding who you're working with and who and what they're trying to get accomplished at a really deep level so you can push them to get there. And if they're not pushing as hard, now you have to question that and question if they really believe in what they're doing.
Yeah, what you just described is mentoring at such a high level. Even if you're not realizing it, you're obviously trying to get your people to perform well, but at the same time, you're mentoring them through that whole process. So I'm curious, you've no doubt had a lot of great teammates, coaches, mentors, associates along the way. Is there one piece of advice that you received from a mentor that has stayed with you? It maybe pops up in your mind from time to time when you're going through a rough patch. I just like to gain and glean some of that knowledge that we all absorb from the people that we're around. So, is there somebody that sticks out for you that gave you a great piece of advice?
Yeah, if you guys are Chicago Bear fans, you remember my 2010 season when I only played 3 games. Mike Martz was our offensive coordinator, and Mike Martz, I didn't necessarily like him as a coach because I believe that he was playing games with my career. He was playing politics with my career. However, I loved his philosophies. I loved the way that he pushed people, and it was the same for everybody. I don't care if you were the quarterback or the 53rd man on the roster. And for him, I recall him saying, "Hey, how many of you guys know how to be champions? How many of you guys want to be champions?" Everybody raised their hand. They said, "How many guys know how to be a champion?" Nobody raised their hand. And he
Wow.
said, champions are the people who do the mundane things better than their competition. And then he went on to illustrate this point, say, everybody wants to be on Sports Center. Everybody wants to make that not play. But there's so many things that happen before you make that catch, before you make that run, before you make that tackle, before you make that interception, that you have to put yourself in position. That's where the highlight is made before all the work that you put in. And so that always stuck with me because it mirrored something that my high school coach told me, Coach Jones, in basketball. We had a really good high school basketball team. Our second string team probably could have made the playoffs against most where we were at. And one day he stopped practice because he we practiced hard as hell. He stopped practice and he said, "Oh, we practiced so hard." And to me, I'm what 16, 17 years old. I'm thinking, nah, because you just want to kill us. Then he said, we practice hard because if we do this in practice, it makes the games easy. If you practice hard, it makes the games easy. All right, that kind of makes sense. And
Yeah.
so those two things, they always stuck with me. And it's been a lot of things, but those two things, they stuck with me. And one of the things, like my wife always joked, "You so smart, like you don't never fail a test, this and that and the other." I never stress about tests that I have to take. I stress about the preparation of the test.
Yeah. That's a great point. That's a great point. Because
Yeah.
that's really the hard part, as you mentioned. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So that's a good segue. You're an international global keynote speaker as well. So what drives your passion for sharing your experiences and inspiring others with your message, especially given all that you've experienced and all that you've learned to this point?
Bill, everybody can be great. Everybody can be great in something. And I want everybody who I'm able to touch and inspire to understand that. I want them to understand no, greatness is not just for the select few. Greatness is for the people who actually believe it and who actually dive into it and say, and just make it up in their mind that, hey, if I want to be great, I can choose to be great at whatever. You got to have some talent in whatever you're doing, right? You know, it's not about just talent, but you got to be able to execute the details of whatever that is that you're trying to be great in. But everybody has that. And the reason why I'm so passionate about that and why I try to pull that out of people and give my experiences, because I know that I'm just an ordinary guy. Ran a 4.8840, Bill, and you know that's slow as hell.
You were faster than me, though. I'll tell you that.
Really?
Oh yeah.
You
I was like a five flat guy at the combine, real stiff and tight. I
What
wasn't
position
going
did you
anywhere.
what position did you play, Bill?
I was a quarterback. So I
Uh,
just wanted to take 5 or 7 steps, that's it, and then let the ball go and let the real athletes do the work.
all right, yeah, you got a point. I would expect the quarterback to be a little bit faster. Um,
They are
but
these days, I just wasn't.
yeah, I'm short for a tight end, 6'2" and 7/8. I was 250 to 255 pounds as a tight end. I never made it to a Pro Bowl as a tight end. But when I left the Chicago Bears, I was considered as one of the greatest Chicago Bears tight ends in history. I didn't do anything special. And I never once said to myself, hey, I'm a great tight end. It was all about that process of just going to work, doing what I'm supposed to do, trying to do it at the highest level that I can. And I look up 8 years later, and that outside validation came to me as being one of the greatest tight ends in history of the
That
Chicago Bears.
that's amazing. That is truly amazing, and that speaks to everything we've just talked about. It's not what the world sees at the end, it's not the game, it's all the stuff that goes into it beforehand. So I love that you capped it with that, but I do wanna ask you one more question. You talked earlier about your big goals for business and your business, which is Bear Down Logistics. Tell me just briefly, what type of legacy do you hope to leave behind? Not just as a former athlete, you just mentioned your mark on the Chicago Bears, but as a businessman as well, and as a friend and as a mentor.
First of all, it starts with my family. When I'm gone, I want my kids and my grandkids and hopefully my great grandkids to say, you know what? I had a good dad. I had a good granddad. I had a good great grandfather. Right. And then all of the other people that I've been able to touch, I just want people to say, you know what? That dude, he was relentless about trying to bring the best out of people. Because for me, that's what it's all about. We all should be trying to bring the best out of each other. Right. I don't care color, religion, politics, all of that BS doesn't matter. How can we come together? How can we collaborate? How can we unite? I can bring something to the table for Bill. Bill can bring something to the table for me, and we can both be better because of it. I believe that's what life is about. And at the end of the day, when I'm dead and gone, hopefully I have people at my funeral and they're standing up and saying, hey, here's how Desmond helped me be a better person. Here's what Desmond said to me. Here's what a piece of advice. Here's something that I was able to help a multitude of people just live life at the highest capacity that they could.
I'll tell you something, Desmond, you just brought a lot to the table for the listeners in this episode. So thank you so much for being here. And before I let you go, tell the listeners where they can follow you, connect with you, and learn even more about you.
Yeah, I just got off of social media, everything but LinkedIn. I got off of in January just so I could be more focused. But if you want to go to LinkedIn, Desmond Clark on LinkedIn, easy to find. Reach out to me. I communicate a lot with people through LinkedIn. That's the best way.
Thank you so much, Desmond. I really appreciated the conversation, the insights, and thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.